Okay, thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. Yes, I'm Cedric Coetzee. It's the Mzimvelo RINO Security Support Unit for Mzimvelo. I'm not a very secretive fella. I make a point of making sure that I'm always in a uniform, as my predecessor and CEO, Dr. George Hughes, taught me very clearly. So what I'm about to present, hopefully, is good information. Obviously, yes, there is some sort of element of confidentiality in the information, but what I'm about to produce is trying to put out what a picture is in KwaZulu-Natal at the moment. In terms of the province, we've got two key areas that we look at. Here in the northern Zululand, both public and private reserves, so that's state and private reserves. We assist with both. In the province, we do include the private game reserves in our stats. That is a little bit different to Kruger National Park, who only look at the state reserves. They don't look outside of the game reserves. Then in the west, we've also got populations sitting up there, but here is our main focus in terms of all our anti-poaching operations. In terms of what's happening in the province at the moment, we're sitting at 126 animals at the moment, and it's the highest it's been. And I'll give you some sort of breakdown in terms of that later on. In terms of how we operate, how we're structured, we have gone for a model that is state-backed. Right in the beginning, we made sure that we did have all the necessary appointments and so forth. When we first started, we were operating as on, let's call it a friendship sort of basis. I know a policeman who can help us and so forth. We went to the national level and we got a national joint instruction, which is basically saying that the South African Police Force and its subsidiary security agencies will help us. So we got that. We then went to our provincial commissioner, and she set up a Provincial Priority Crime Committee, which basically allows us to access the provincial police resources. From there, we made sure that the private sector are representative. The Director of Public Prosecutions represented ourselves. RCC is Intelligence Coordinating Committee. Then the South African Police Services Organised Crime, commonly known as the Hawks, and the South African Stock Theft Unit from the police. This is the JOCCOM, which is the Joint Operations Command Center that we set up in Shishlui. We basically are mirroring what is happening in Kruger National Park in terms of operations, command and control. Then South African Police Services Crime Intelligence, and then of course the South African Defence Force. In terms of our Intelligence Coordinating Committee, it does form a critical part in our operations and the anti-poaching operations. It's the only state agencies that are allowed to collect intelligence are the South African Police Services, the South African Defence Force, and the State Security Agency. So those are the key state agencies that are allowed to collect intelligence, and they formed an Intelligence Coordinating Committee. If you ever hear ICC, that's exactly what it is. We are represented on it. We do collect information, and we do put it into the intelligence database. We have one single database in the province, which is notebook analysis. We do share it with the national as well. This is a demographic of how we operate at the moment. As I said, we've got our national joints decision there, which goes to our provincial. We look at our intelligence coordinating, and then of course we also have our Mzimvelo RINO security in there. We then make sure that we engage with our operations. So anything that actually gets developed here in this line in terms of our province goes into a national structure, which I'll explain right now. But this is just to say that anything coming from national now or provincial goes into a central place where we can operationalize. And it's been incredibly important because, and I'll give you some idea, try and give you some idea of why we're saying that there has been a deflection of poaching effort to the province of KwaZulu-Natal. This is our traditional provincial setup where we operate. We have our DPCR, which is the Hawks. We have Mzavelo, we have the detectives, National Prosecuting Authority, and of course ballistics and the stock theft unit. The stock theft unit, together with the Hawks investigates levels 3s, 4s, and 5s, and the stock theft unit investigate levels 1s and 2s. 1s and 2s are basically the poachers on the ground, and then the higher levels of 3, 4, and 5 are the traders and the exporters. This is how it has turned over the past year. The National Commissioner has what they term as Operational RINO. It's a national initiative by the South African Police Services. It's in together with the strategy that was being mentioned earlier on. In fact, that we now get run through, our operations get run through a national level. We do use the Mission Area Control Center, commonly known as MATJOC, which is operations out of Skukuza now. So we do report directly into Skukuza at the moment. We have a Operation Rhino 7 Tactical Operations Center at the Shishlui Airfield, formerly known as Zapwing. Zapwing still operates out of there, but we all now have an Operations Tactical Center at Shishlui Airfield, which comprises of ourselves, South African Police Services, State Security, and SANDF. So we've moved some way down the line from having a sort of provincial structure now into a national operation. In terms of that, it has its own intelligence coordinating committee, which we do feed into, and it gets married together with the national intelligence. And then, of course, from there, we launch our operations and activities. This is just to give you an idea of how it actually works. We do gather intelligence from all sorts, overt, covert, state security, private, Mzavelo, SANDF. We do put it all into the ICC, the Intelligence Coordinating Committee, which is then analyzed and verified and so forth. And then it goes into a number of actions. It can either go into investigations with, in terms of there's a specific investigation that has to be done in terms of maybe a certain suspect. That is then handed over to the South African Police Services and their detectives, so they will go and investigate that. If there's horn smuggling and so forth that is identified, that'll be handed over to the Hawks, and they are handed over in terms of directives. So there is an action to say this is exactly what the information is and how we deem that there's been crime being committed. So we've identified the crime and it gets handed over. And then, of course, the rhino poaching itself, that will go through to the reserve. So if there's information of a imminent incursion to one of the game reserves, then it goes to our reserve managers here. So that's basically the setup that operates our information. This is, we do operate off notebook analysis. We do have, it's increased hugely now with the amount of information that's in it. We do cooperate with state security, crime intelligence, Kruger National Park, and we are at the moment busy meshing our information together. The way we do it, we do form linkages between persons, firearms, vehicles, and so forth. We identify a suspect, and then that would be handed over to whichever grouping we believe it is. So if an officer gets a instruction that somebody might be coming into their section or to their game reserve, normally we have a profile that goes with that. In terms of Mzavelo, we do an annual security assessment. It's based on all the enablers. In other words, what enables us to perform our task in protecting the security in terms of specifically around rhino, is we've got all the items there that we look at, and we give them a rate each year, which is basically based on yes and no, and fair, good, and poor. So we can measure over the number of years how we've progressed and what are the outstanding issues. It's a little bit small, and I've kept it like that on purpose. Maybe some of you can read it, but this here is mainly the operational budgets and corporate issues sitting up here. then we go down to operational issues and reactions here. So it does have its compartments where we measure ourselves each year, and this goes into the budgeting process, hopefully to resolve next year. What have we done over the past year or so? We did do our chemical infusion. That was quite widely spoken about in terms of the media and so forth. We have ceased with that. We did do a trial in terms of whether it would work or not, and we did end up with a workshop, whether it's all the parameters in exactly what happened from the actual infusion to the prevention of people coming into the reserve to maybe hunt poison rhino. We have shelved that. We are still looking at ways that infusion can work in terms of protecting the animals in situ. We do deploy the SANDF. The SANDF can only operate within the border areas. That's where Kruger National Park are quite lucky. They do have an open mandate to operate on that border. So they do only do more in Tembe, but we have do run training operations for them, which we now do in Zululand Park and other parks. But that's on an ad hoc basis and not an ongoing basis. In terms of the private sector, we still place a lot of emphasis on the private sector. Whatever we have for our reserves, we do make available for the private sector. So all our intelligence is not restricted to Imzavela areas. Our systems and everything, even our helicopters and so forth, are made available to the private sector. Dehorning, we are presently dehorning in the smaller reserves on the smaller populations at the moment. So that has been done, and we have dehorned a number of reserves at the moment. In terms of dogs, we have introduced the dogs mainly through into Zululand Park, which we have a dog program, and together with the detection dog that does the reserve. So we do have a dog program right now, and together with the tracking dogs at Zululand, they've been successful on 2 arrests as of to date. In terms of the trade in rhino horn, you've all heard the debate issues that were held, but anyway, South Africa does not allow, the moratorium is still in place in terms of trade of rhino horn. In terms of the corridor road surveillance, we have increased our surveillance of the corridor road. We do have towers, we do have specific effort to patrol the corridor road, and I'll show you why it is a problem. And we've just handed over to the South African Police Services to patrol the corridor road as well. We do have command and control, Blue Force tracking. It's basically we are live in Zululand Park at the moment, where we know where all our resources are at any one time, and we can make sure that they're moving towards a specific problem or so forth. The reporting in is more efficient now. We get it more or less on time when the incident happens. But we are following exactly what Kruger National Park are doing, because they are focused on the early detection and rapid response. We're following the same, but we have a bit of a difference, which I'll show you a bit later. In terms of the firearms, our principle is to clear the firearms from outside the park, that before they get into the park to have a go at shooting an animal. So a lot of our intelligence is focused on firearms, and therefore a lot of our arrests are focused on the unlawful possession of illegal firearms. Okay, and in terms of our stats where we are right now, as of the 31st of October, we're sitting at 132 until September, which I'll go into a little bit more detail. We were doing just a little bit, about 20% up on 2015. But we've also doubled up on our arrests. But you know, if you look at those two, there doesn't seem to be too much of an impact on the stopping of the persons coming into the parks. The one thing we do look at, we do use as a measure, is the percentage of population in terms of the total. we're sitting at about 3.6 of our total population. In terms of white, it's the 3.8, and then black 2.2. We based our targets on the rhino management plan for the province. So it says in that plan there's a 2% threshold in terms of rhino poaching. So that's our goal, but at the moment we over that, and that's our percentage of population. In terms of threat review, we do plot all our threat, and a threat would be right from the whether a notification is held or an incursion has happened or spoor is picked up. This here is our threat analysis, and this is the numbers of rhino that we lose. This here is September. We had an absolute decrease in threat, but we had an absolute increase in numbers of animals we lost. I'll show you the summary of it a little bit later. But we did have a significant arrest over here, and what we presume happened here was that one bunch came in and basically annihilated us on the corridor road. So there was little poaching effort, but high reward in terms of numbers of animals poached. Since then, we've had, again, a rapid increase in terms of incursions and threats on Mzimvela reserves. Here we analyze our moon phase, whereas new moon and full moon were the key areas when rhino poaching was taking place. We do take it back to not the date the carcass was found, but the estimated date of death. And we've analyzed it, and as you can see, it's now consistent right through the moon phases. So it's not only around full moon anymore, we're right through the moon phases, and basically we've chased them into the dark periods, where we've had a number of wounded rhino that have got away but died later, and we've recovered the horns. So that's been a shift in the trend. In terms of days of the week, we did look at that. It's just to give you an idea that we do analyze the data to try and get a better understanding. No real trend other than most probably sort of heading towards the weekend, and then Monday they're going to sell the horn. Basically, that's what we got. In terms of the September, what happened was that we lost all the rhino here in the corridor road. It was over a 2 to 3 day period, and that's where we found all the rhino. But what this can also say is that, as you can see, these are the heat maps of the threat at Shishlu and Mfolozi Park, which is bearing most of the threat at the moment. This was the key area right on the corridor road. We have really tried to consolidate around the corridor road at the moment. But as you can see, it's all on the boundaries of the Shishlu and Mfolozi Park. They don't spend much time in the park at all. We estimate up to 20 minutes for them to get a rhino, remove the horn, and get out. That's our reaction time. So compared to 2 to 3 days in the Kruger National Park, we believe that's why most probably some of them are coming down. So there's less risk for them as time spent in the game reserve. But this is basically analysis of that event which happened in September, and you can see it's all around the corridor road and the boundaries. In terms of our arrest stats, we virtually doubled from last year, mainly focused around firearms and the numbers of arrests. We have had a number of arrests in terms of incursions, but as I said previously, we have little reaction time. Unless they are picked up right at a patrol level, it's very, very difficult to react and get an arrest. So we've doubled on that in terms of our arrests. The numbers of axes, the other arm that we've just recently arrested for is a crossbow. We think it was a trial to see if it was could be used to shoot rhino, and it's a less noisy thing because they do know we listen for the gunshot. We do use our helicopters. It's a huge bonus, but it's only a day at the moment. We do analyze our hours. This here is mainly just to give you an idea that it's mainly at Shishlu and Mfolozi Park and in terms of reactions. But that's only during daylight. Most of the months we use all our allocated hours. What happened was when we introduced them, we did chase them And we did have a slight reduction in poaching, but all they did was move into the night, and we don't have night capabilities as Kruger National Park does. In terms of our fixed wing, this is mainly to do aerial surveillance. What it's mainly used for now is to pick up carcasses, and it flies all both that goes for the helicopters as well as the private reserves as well. Okay, I'm nearly finished. In terms of the UAV, we have suspended this operation. We've picked up problems in terms of the weather prohibiting flights, and also the ability to fly, in certain conditions. So we have suspended them, and we're looking at alternatives at the moment. In terms of threat review, we do look at the calibers of firearms used. And as you can see, 375 in what reserve and so forth. So your 375 is the predominant firearm, together with the 303 and the 458. Just to give you an idea of where we're moving, we are moving in terms of our command and control. We've installed digital radio systems in all the reserves. We do have an early response and monitoring system. We do have a patrol monitoring system in place right now. We do have the intelligence, and we're busy doing a command and control setup, and we're already alive in Shishlui and Mfolozi Park. And then we want to move on to rhino case management. In terms of the intensive protection areas, you've heard about it. What we're hoping to do is to produce a specific plan for each and specific reserve. So there is no one blanket remedy for all the reserves. Most of the reserves are somehow different in some way. So we will actually produce individual plans.